Hello there everybody, welcome back beautiful. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to the first Should You Pull video of 2022 for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. So we have two banners to be talking about today for this week's batch, and the first of which is going to be Snow, and the second of which is going to contain a brand new character with Ursula. Now we know that Snow has a fantastic BT coming down later down the line, but how does he fare with just his LD on his own? And is Ursula enough to pull your resources away even though we're this close to C90 and what is probably likely going to be some global firsts for the anniversary? If you'd like to find out more about them and their events, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Of course, don't forget to check out all of my social links in the description box below, including Twitch, where you can come and find me playing all manner of Final Fantasy Dissidia Opera Omnia stuff, Final Fantasy XIV, and all sorts of little bits and pieces of Final Fantasy content in between, including Count Up, which will be resuming with Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remasters release. It'd be lovely to have you guys there. Over on Patreon, I do shout out one of my patrons who support this channel, and I'm ever so grateful to each and every one of you for doing so every time I release a video. And today that person is going to be Martin Sittic, who has Golbez as their title card. A massive thank you goes out to you for always being present in my streams, being very supportive, and always talking to me. I love talking to people on stream. It's the reason I do what I do. So a massive thank you goes out to you as well, and all of my other patrons. And if you're interested in joining in, there is a link in the description box below for that as well. And of course, let's not forget to shout out all of the other content creators and resources that are out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia, with special shout outs going out to Leo Bob and Mindy U for their translations over from the JP side on Reddit, Tom Bridgetroop for their fantastic infographics, DissidiaCompendium.com for their wonderful information, DissidiaDB.com, DissidiaInfo.com, and all sorts of other resources out there as well, which I very much encourage you to use, as we use them all very frequently on this channel too. So as I said earlier, we have two banners to cover today for this week, and the first of which is going to be Snow's Intertwined Worlds banner. So this is going to contain Snow, obviously all of his kit, his brand new LD. We're also getting a rerun of Lion, in case anybody fancied her and they missed out on her the first time. She still hits fairly hard. She's got her Dispel kit. She's relatively new. She was one of the characters that came just before BT Plus era, but she's ultimately not really worth going out of your way for, as many of these kind of side LD characters tend to be. And then Realm EX is on there, and of course marking a BT if you don't already have that. So Snow is the only featured character realistically that's getting anything new from this event, and Snow gets quite a lot. So he has a rework first and foremost. So basically, if you haven't used Snow before, he's just a tank. He was one that soaked damage, didn't really counter-attack, didn't really do anything like that. He just soaked up a lot of damage and did a fairly decent amount of damage on his turn, and was very geared towards ice, but he could never really heal much before apart from his C65, and he didn't really do anything in terms of off-turn damage. Well, that changes with his LD. To talk about his rework, Steel Guard gets a couple more uses, which is his lock-like ability that makes enemies attack him. He now gets his brave attacks go to Ice Element, and he hits a little bit harder, and it's a free turn now as well. And then Frost Strike, which is his attacking move, now does extra HP dumps and just hits harder. Like, he gains bravery between each of his attacks, which is an important part of his kit because it means that he pairs up very well with Brave game characters and things like that. And, you know, it just manages to heal himself as well while he's doing stuff, so he keeps himself alive. Snow's LD weapon is a very odd weapon in that it's an off-turn damage weapon, but it doesn't function like other tanks do. So it's AoE Brave HP attack. We know how all this goes in the past, and he gets a brand new buff from this called Vendetta, which to him gives you Enchant Ice on all of his attacks, so it means he'll do a little bit more ice damage because he imperils for ice with his EX, etc. He gets more Brave gains, and he does more HP damage, which is all the things you realistically want him to do. Party-wise, he also provides HP regen at last, 30% HP damage taken down, which combines with the 20% HP damage taken down he gets from his EX, and he takes significantly less bravery damage as well. But what this has is a stacking effect. So like other characters that have stacking buffs, this actually only has a max level of 2. But basically what it means is that if he takes bravery or HP damage, you then get a stronger version of the attack that results from Vendetta. So this is Retribution. Now Retribution is an attack that goes off at the beginning of Snow's turn. So after enemy turns, everyone else's it doesn't matter. It has to go at the start of Snow's turn. So even if you're not sort of like allowing the enemy's turns, he's still going to get an attack off. So it's an AoE Brave HP that hits twice. He gains gains bravery between each hit. Again, Brave gains, very nice for him. And it does the Ice Imperil as well, which means you never really have to worry about reapplying it in any way. But if he has taken damage, Brave or HP, before his turn, Vendetta goes to a level 2, so you get Retribution Plus from it instead, which is a 4-hit AoE Brave, or a AoE Brave HP that hits 4 times. So obviously, it's much, much stronger. So you want to allow the enemy to get turns in order to hit Snow so that he then hits back significantly harder. Now, this is all well and good. Like, it's really strong. Like, between his Frost Strike and, you know, the Ice Ramp itself, his EX has got multiple HP dumps in it. He now does do, like, some healing. He provides some sort of notable auras, but nothing crazy. Like, he's got a little bit of attack, a little bit of max bravery, and obviously he reduces HP and bravery damage taken for the entire party as well, which is really good. But he's not needed nowadays because we have the likes of Zac, Auron, etc. That tank role is very much covered. Unless, of course, you don't have either of them, at which point you definitely want to be going for Snow, because having a tank available is very nice. And of course, we know that Snow gets an extremely powerful BT effect later down the line, where his BT effect basically makes it so that any attack gets brave gains between HP attacks, which we'll see later on is actually extremely powerful, and you can do a lot of shenanigans with it. So getting his LD now means not having to get it later if that's the way that you're inclined. But past that, you know, his C65 gives you HP regen as well, which is quite nice. You know, you get, you know, decent stuff off of his EX as well. Lock obviously is something you don't have to worry about very much at all for that point, because both his EX and Steel Guard provides it. He gets more uses out of it. It's all just decent stuff. So if you're in need of a tank, then Snow's definitely one worth looking at, because while we're going into C90 era, you're still going to need to use C80 characters for a little while, because you're not going to fill up your party with C90s in the first couple of banners. But going against him, and Ursula for that matter, we don't know what's happening for the rest of this month, and there'll still be time to pull for these guys after we learn a bit more about what's happening, so perhaps holding out on resources might be the right course of action. So now let's take a look at the other banner that we're going to be getting this week, and that's going to be Ursula and her event. Now, it's the first time in a while we've gotten 2 new characters in a month, given that we've had Jagran and now Ursula as well, like, pretty quickly. So there's a nice amount of resources that we can gain from their summon boards, if nothing else. But we are going to be seeing Ursula with her full kit. We're also going to get the return of Sync as well with her LD, which is nice. Like, her LD call is still fairly decent. She's fun to use alongside certain characters like Aphmau, etc. But ultimately, like Lion before her, these side LD characters have largely fallen to the wayside. But if you really wanted to use them, you probably could. I just wouldn't go out of my way for them. And then we have Freya EX for Chaos Challenge purposes, and obviously Markina BT as well. Whether we'll see another banner that has Markina BT on it, I have no idea. We don't know at all what's happening from next week onwards, so we'll just have to wait and see. But going by JP's listing, this should be the last one, but we just don't know. And then looking at Ursula, Ursula is an interesting character. She's got a lot of very weird quirks that, I mean, you know I love my weird characters, like Pain, etc. And Ursula does a lot in her kit, and she does various different support Aura bot style things, whilst also dealing a solid amount of damage. So let's go through each of her abilities individually. Tenketsu is an AoE Brave HP attack that gives her generic kind of attack and max Brave buff that gives her access to her HP and Brave Plus, but she also provides a framed debuff called Tenketsu, which reduces speed and defense, and also makes it so any damage they take from Ursula is going to be weakness damage, which is pretty good. And then it also inflicts instant break on it as well, which is always a nice thing to have access to. We never sniff at instant breaks, because if there are enemies that gain 99999 bravery, it's nice just to kind of go nope at them, which is always good. Chakra is a very interesting attack as well, because instead of like having brave gains, it sets your party's bravery to 100% of their max bravery, and then deals HP damage and doesn't increase her, or doesn't continue her bravery, or like gives you a free turn while you're at it. So you're getting a solid amount of bravery for the party that bypasses Lufenia Plus's brave reductions, because it's not gaining bravery, it's setting it to a certain number, so it's done slightly differently, and then you're getting some damage and you're getting a free turn out of it to boot. Really nice stuff. Tenketsu Boost All is just setting the Tenketsu debuff on all of the enemies so that you have access to it as and when you need it for bravery, like for weakness bravery damage purposes, and you get a bit of max bravery out of it. Her EX, also very interesting, because it gives her a party-wide bravery and attack boost up as well, but it also provides Tenketsu, but also the unframed versions of those debuffs as well. So you're getting in total 80% defense down and 60% speed down. 60% speed down is actually quite a lot. So while I think that people are often waiting for C90 and not wanting to spend out on stuff here, which I completely understand, there is something to be said about Ursula and the things that she does. Her EX is also really cool looking, and it's also an instant turn, doesn't increase turn count, ignores defense. It's just lots of good damage that also gives you a use of just damage. It's just good stuff. And then later on, when she gets to C90, she gets even more tools added to all of this stuff as well. Now her LD is where she gets even weirder. So this again is a defense ignoring attack, like multiple HP dumps, etc. And she gets the buff Pride from Father on it. Her father obviously being Yang. Now you get brave, like HP damage gain up to the party as well. Your party's bravery can't fall below 20%. So Varn's effect, but extended to your party. So it's actually Varn's BT effect, which is really quite good. And then you also get a weird turn warping thing from Ursula. So after an enemy turn, if another party member would get their turn after the enemy, Ursula instead jumps forward and jumps in between the two. Which means that you can set them up for bravery using chakra, you can get some extra damage in, you can refresh your debuffs, you can do whatever you need to with Ursula. So she does a lot of weird things. She also gets an HP attack that comes off of this as well, that you then use generally during those 3 turns. So Tenshoha is basically Charlotta's S2. So the skill where you'll gain some bravery and then you'll deal HP damage equal to each individual party member's current bravery. So you then get even more damage, but through weird ways. But at the end of the day, all of this stuff is really cool. Ursula does tons of different things all at once. She's a party battery, she has turn warping, she does a decent amount of damage, and a pretty solid amount of damage actually, especially with her EX and just Tenshoha and all the weird things that she does. She's got some party auras, she's got some protection on the fact that you can't be broken while she's there. But do you really need her? This is the thing, is that if you want a kitchen sink unit, and you often find this with kitchen sink units like Zidane or Ursula for that matter, is that they're always really cool, but unless you're using them in very specific ways, you often find you don't really need them. And this close to C90, and certainly this close to anniversary, surprises, all sorts of things that can go left of field, then maybe it's again, like Snow, worth holding out at least until next week to find out what it is that we could be getting, that we could be spending our resources on differently, and when C90 might actually be turning up. And then wrapping up here, core abilities wise, I actually quite like both of these guys. Steel Guard on Snow is a typical lock sort of core ability. Sellers, if you have Sellers, you'll probably just use that instead. But you do get the Steel Guard buff, which makes it so you take less damage, and you also get, just some damage while you're at it. Ice Ramp, however, gives you Ice Enchant to the character that's using it. It is important to note with Snow's Ice Enchant, it's to himself only and not to the party, which is a bit of a minus mark on him, but we'll forgive him. You get HP damage up by 15%, and you get Brave gains up by 20% on the character. And then you also get Ice Imperil on top of that as well. So if you're using this on a character that as an off-turn damage dealer, like your cores, your canes, etc., this could actually be really useful because you get quite a lot out of it all on one character. And then Ursula, Chakra is her has a regular call ability. Now, I believe, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, that this is calculated differently from her actual Chakra ability, where it's you gain bravery instead of it being a set number, so it is going to be affected by Lithenia Plus gain reductions. But it's an ability that batteries, deals damage, and doesn't consume your bravery, and you get Tenketsu off of it, which is defense and speed down, which is just nice. It's just a nice consolidated debuff. It does its thing. Scarlet Legs of Fury is another one that does another ignoring defense attack that gives you Tenketsu again, but you get a party-wide max brave overflow and HP damage up and bravery damage up, and you get the party bravery won't fall below 10%, so you get the break immunity as well. So while I don't think either of these characters are mandatory in any way, shape or form, if you want something quirky, different, and, something fun to play with, I don't think that there's anything wrong with pulling for either of these characters, unless, of course, you're low on resources, at which point I would absolutely save and see what's coming in the next few weeks. So now let's take a look at the Lufenia missions that come along with these characters as well and see what it is we can come to expect. So Snow's Intertwined Wills, we're going to be getting the Tyrant returning here, which we have actually fought before. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the period of time in, like, Dissidia where we're getting some more iconic enemies coming along, because I know it's happening, so a late C90 area, but that bit I'm genuinely quite excited for. But for now, we're getting the Tyrant again, and like before, the Tyrant will summon a summoned sword which will attack you independently, but in this one, it's kind of weird because the sword will pull up the turn of the character that it's attacking in order to make it so that your turn goes next, which obviously works very, very well for Snow, given that he can use his Retribution attack straight after it moves. And other than that, it has a recast attack where it will inflict a lot of debuffs on you, so if you want to avoid that, you can bring characters like Lena along if you want to have debuff evasion. Or if you if you want to do that way, then tanking and returning fire damage is probably the way to go, that it's supposed to be. Because the Lufenia Orb increases by 3 whenever you take reduced bravery damage through effects, so Gabranth, Snow, anything that reduces any kind of bravery damage that they take, or pain even as well. It also increases by 1 when you deal ice bravery damage. Snow's obviously not that great for this particular part of it because he only enchants himself for ice. However, we have Sellers and we have Kurasame, who do enchant for ice. So if you have those two, or even Kurasame's LD call while you're using it on a character that you're not planning on getting turns anytime soon, or anything like that, then you can absolutely zero boss turn this if you so choose. There's lots of ways to go about it. You can just take your veins, you can take all sorts of things like Quistices, all sorts of stuff. As long as you're enchanted for ice, you'll never really have to worry about the orb ticking down. And summons and BTs are a thing too, so that way you can actually tick the orb back up if you're worried about that. And then with Ursula's event, we get a new enemy, which is the Killing Scissors, which are like variants on the Scorpion enemies that we've seen. And this one is a bit weird as well because you get the orb come at 80% and then leave at 50% and then 30% and then leave again. And it increases when a player grants bravery up to like 100% or more of the target's max bravery during one action. So obviously this is decided, or you're decidedly wanting you to use Ursula's chakra ability to make that happen. But she's not the only character that can. There's actually quite a lot of characters. If you have Bart's, then you can absolutely use him and he'll 100% do the job. And because the orb comes and goes so frequently, you can just boss this down very quickly because you only have to deal with it from 80% to 50% and then 30% to 0%. So if you can push your way through that with BTs, summons, all that kind of thing, then you may not have to worry about the orb at all. But if you have characters like Lena, Bart, Ursula, then you'll be able to tackle it that way, and you can always use, there's lots of different ways of doing it. Again, zero turning is a way to do it. If you don't want to do that, then you can take Snow, Pain, Ursula. Again, similar type thing where the enemies will often kind of delay you with their attacks, like the bubble breaths, etc. They'll delay you, but then Ursula's supposed to come along and then take turns in between so that she can shave their bravery down nice and easily while still dealing a large amount of damage. And then past that, just bring your biggest hitters. It's not a super challenging Lufenia Plus, and going this close to C90 era, you could even wait to see what happens next week and then come back with stuff that's even stronger. So now, of course, we have Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and tell everybody whether you would or wouldn't pull on any of these banners and why that might be the case. So as always, a huge thank you to my patrons for casting their votes and their comments. I know it's New Year's, so it's really, really valuable that you guys have taken the time out to do these polls. It really does mean the world to us, and it means that any opinions that I give are not just my own, but I can also display the opinions of others as well. So let's go into some numbers. With Snow's banner, this is an interesting one actually. Nobody is going in with gems at all. 47% of people said they were going in with 100 or more tickets, 18% said less than 100 tickets, and 35% said no thanks. So I'm in the camp of less than 100 tickets, at least initially. Like I am fairly sure that I don't need Snow at this point. I just kind of like him, and I'd like another shot at Machina BT, so I don't mind throwing a little bit at him. But getting his LD He's a character I enjoy, and I probably would find use for him going forward, even in the early C90 era. And then he obviously gets his BT, and that will make that better. But I don't think anybody needs to be pulling for him right now. Certainly, I know I've said it before, we have C90 era, we have anniversary stuff. It's better to have all of the knowledge available to us before making any big decisions. And then with Ursula's banner, we have 3% of people saying yes to gems, 34% of people saying yes to 100 or more tickets, 34% saying yes to less than 100 tickets, and 28% of people saying that they don't fancy it. Again, I'm thinking less than 100 tickets again, because while I don't need Ursula, I think she's really cool, and I really like the LD call abilities on both of these characters, and later down the line, she gets her FR attack, and like then she might be really good. Like, it's too soon to tell, because she's only recently come out with her FR in JP, so it's a bit too soon to tell, really. But I think she's really cool now, and she could be really fun going forward, but I could absolutely live without her. And then going into some of the comments, Luca Yasha says, going to be skipping Snow this time round and will wait for his return with his BT and Lise LD, because even though she's Lise, she's from 14, so I have to have her. As for Ursula, she's from the FF4 world, so I must have her. However, due to how badly my resources have died due to bad luck, I can only put in 100 tickets. That is a good point, is the fact that when he comes back with his BT, you could argue that if you were after Lise LD, you'd want to pull on this banner anyway, because then you'd be able, you'd want to pull on that banner anyway, sorry, because then you've got a chance of getting Snow LD and Lise LD, because they both feature in the same place, and then any chances to get Snow BTs means not having to use tokens or having to overspend to get it. So Alex says, I'm using tickets on Snow, the influx we got was unexpected, and the fact that I token the BT makes gems not so great as an option. I know he's coming back later with the BT, but I simply find his kit to be amazing. Off-turn damage, on-turn damage, healing, regen, damage reduction, enchant, he's got everything. We got Auron recently, and I always have a soft spot for Warrior of Light, but Snow really looks like it could be my favourite tank. I'm going to use him on Ursula's event and Divine Ifrit in the near future, but I'm sure I'll have more chances moving on, especially when he receives his BT. I'm honestly not interested in Ursula in the slightest. I know she has a packed kit with many appealing aspects combined into one, but I just don't see myself using her very much moving forward, not even on her own event. The need for her is below minimal if you ask me, so I'll throw a few tickets for collection purposes and call it a day. I don't usually wait for future banners, but in this case, the difference is really between never using her and considering the option quite a bit later on. Absolutely fair. We all know I love Warrior of Light, but I actually do really like Snow as well. I think that he's just fun. And while I really like Auron, I think I do kind of like Snow more, which is probably really bad, but I know that a lot of people really like Auron, and he is really good. I just kind of enjoy him, and I'm trying to be a bit more cavalier with my resources so that it doesn't fuss me too much when I don't pull well. So yeah, I guess that's how I feel about it, and I actually completely understand where you're coming from. She's not needed, and neither is Snow, and therefore, if you're looking for characters that you absolutely have to have, you're not going to find them here. G-Terror says, with the extra tickets we got this month from boards, I'll be throwing 100 to Snow and 200 to Ursula. Snow is a nice to have now option to make chasing his BT later down the road easier if I already have the LD. I also want Lise later, but I absolutely detest chasing two must-have units on the same banner. Not having two units on a banner is only acceptable in my opinion when one is the chase and the other is a consolation prize. Ursula has always intrigued me since I saw her JP release. Good defense down and speed down, which is a mechanic I've loved using in the past, with some interesting party aura and turn walls. A little bit of everything. Seems fun and a decent support unit alongside two BT plus units. We did get a lot of tickets recently as well, yes, absolutely, and there's the last couple of comments that mentioned that, but we don't know what's coming up in the next week or so, and I don't want to end up spending loads on these characters when we've got anniversary and a big old gap of we don't know just about to come up, because it could be anything. It could be must-haves. Yes, obviously a lot of us have gems in reserve for that kind of thing, but I like to know all of my options before I spend loads of resources. So for me, 100 tickets is nothing, realistically. You get that back in an event or two. 200 is a decent amount, and we did get a big influx of stuff recently. So if you want some new toys to play with, you can spend them here and it'd be fine. And then finally, Sir Will says, being just before C90 is an awkward time. Both are a skip for me. Snow returns with another rework in BT that really makes him busted. His BT banner has Lise 2, and I must have 14 stuff. I love the fact that all of my patrons really love 14 as much as I do, although I'm not the biggest Lise fan, I have to say. Ursula is brand new, meaning you need her EX and her LD, and I already have Machina's BT, so I just don't feel compelled to put the resources into her. My resources are fairly low, and there's a lot more compelling banners coming soon. If you don't care about Lise, need Machina's BT, or just want the LD in advance, then you could pull on Snow now, but that isn't me. I would like Machina's BT, I don't particularly care about Lise, and I think I could use the LD in advance, so therefore I'm like, I don't mind pulling on a bit of Snow, like, that's alright, it could be fun. But Ursula, I can see, like, yeah, I think she's fun, but ultimately, like, even reading these comments, my opinion's kind of going like this, and I'm like, oh, maybe I don't really need her. But, you know, I think it's just a choice thing. Like, at the end of the day, C90, anniversary, new units now. The choice is up to you. So now, of course, we have the big question. Should you be pulling for either Snow or Ursula? So in Snow's case, I think that Snow can actually be better than people think he is with just his LD, provided you're using the correct team to work with him. Now, a lot of players, myself included, do a lot of zero boss turn runs in their Lufenia pluses. If you like doing that, you're not going to want Snow. You're just not going to want him. He doesn't do very well in those kinds of teams, like many tanks realistically. And if you have access to like Oren or Zac, you'll probably find you just don't really need him. He's not really an upgrade so much as a side grade, because the way his counterattack works is kind of weird, because it's not really a counterattack, because he has to still get turns in order to be able to make use of them. But you can abuse that to your advantage as well, because he actually triggers it on cool abilities, his C65, all sorts of bits and pieces where you can actually do a lot of damage with Snow. And he does provide solid defensive buffs, a little bit of offensive auras, some HP regen at last thanks to his LD buff. And getting it now means not having to get it when his BT Plus comes around, which is a time where a lot of people are going to be very interested in Snow all of a sudden. But his auras, like I said, they're solid, but they're not amazing, which means that he's not enough to carry a team on his own, unless you've got like BT effects going off left, right, and centre, for him to really do enough damage to make it worth his while. Ursula is a kitchen sink unit. She absolutely does a little bit of everything. She's got the battery, she's got the instant break, she's got the turn warping, she's got the fact that your party can't really be broken very easily, which is something that she carries into her LD call as well. She's got lots and lots of nice things going on with her kit, but she's the last unit before a major power creep, and that generally doesn't do very well for a lot of characters, and this is no exception really. If you want to use Ursula, you can use her for a while. I like her kit. I think it's really quirky, weird, cool, and it's the kind of character I really like to play with. But I do think that the position and the timing of her release leaves her in a place where she's going to fall into obscurity quickly. That being said, I do like the LD call abilities on both of these characters. Are they ones you're going to use all the time, like your Pharises, your Kurisames, etc.? No, not really, but they're cool and you might make use of them. And going into C90 era, anything that has any semblance of being useful, like while still being a C80, that's something worth looking at. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I did want to make sure that you guys knew that the Dissidia content is very much still up and running. On Friday I'll have my releases for my pulls for Snow and Ursula, depending on how many I decide to do at the time, and then I will release sort of like one of the Lufenia missions as well, depending on which one is more exciting, so you guys have that to look forward to. And then I have some FF14 content coming out later this week as well. When it comes to Dissidia, Christ knows what's going on next week. No one has any idea as to what's happening. I assume that there's something going on that's going to be released between now and C90 era. Like if we get global firsts, I have a horrible feeling there's still going to be C80, which I don't know how I feel about that. But maybe because we haven't had Vanille or Lightning BT, there might be a global first BT batch on the way. It could happen. I'm not saying it definitely will, because there's some holes in that argument. Like, there's normally 3 banners to a batch, and I can only think of 2 others, or like one that would be released after and one that would be released alongside the BT batch. But we just don't know. There's no information going at this point forward. We're going into a proper sort of dark zone. So sound off in the comments and let me know what you think is going to happen next week. But until then, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care and have a lovely day. See you later.